In response to my last video regarding the relationship between BDSM, NXIVM, and enthusiastic consent, many of you have asked me, how do you identify a predator before it's too late? Essentially, if that level of sneaky manipulation is possible, how do you know who to trust? So stay tuned, because by the end of this video, you will know exactly the positive, healthy traits to look for when evaluating a potential dominant. Our first green flag of a good dominant is patient. And I define patience as willing to stay present without coercion or rush. Because here's the thing, lust can't wait. Dominance can, love can, lust can't wait. So if you are evaluating a potential new play partner or dominant and they're incredibly pushy, they're incredibly forceful, they try to circumvent those boundaries, you feel like you're always disappointing them if you're not keeping up with the pace of what they want sexually, whatever. And I've actually found this sense of rush, of impatience, of entitlement, and a sense of like demanding, even from the bottom side. As a professional femdom, I found a lot of times porn addicted subs, men, would come to me claiming that they were looking for femdom, but really they were incredibly pushy, incredibly impatient, incredibly demanding, incredibly entitled, and all they really wanted was to hire me as nothing more than a service top to act out their porn addicted fantasies. So that's why I'm always saying that there's so many problems that porn will create in yourself and in your relationship, and this is one of them. Lust can't wait. Dominance can, love can. So that is a very, very good test when you are evaluating a potential new dominant. Are they patient with you? Are they willing to stay wherever you are and move at the pace that you feel safe? Respectful. Essentially, the dominant will celebrate and encourage the submissive's autonomy. And here's the thing, a dominant is not a predator, and a dominant is not an abuser. Now, you can have a very primal energy in your style of dominance, but that doesn't make you a predator as long as there's consent. So you can still experience that hunter-huntress energy in your primal play, especially if you are very much a primal dominant, but that doesn't make you a predator if you are respectful of your submissive's autonomy and you celebrate the fact that they have boundaries. You want them to have boundaries. You want them to have limits. And submissives, that's a really big key for you to pay attention to. Does the dominant not only desire to hear your boundaries, they want to know your limits, but they are very mindful about upholding them and respecting them? That is a very, very good sign. And submissives, my little pro tip for you here to give you some peace of mind as you are vetting a potential dominant, and please vet them. Do not just jump into bed with them. Do not just jump into a scene with them. Vet them, okay? And submissives, one of the best ways I've found to test if there is this level of respect in your potential dominant is to set boundaries unapologetically, okay? State your boundaries. This is how I will and will not be treated. This is how I will and will not be spoken to. These are my limits sexually, emotionally, relationally, whatever. Set those boundaries and watch what happens, because here's the thing. Unhealthy people cannot respond to health in a healthy way. So if you set very healthy, reasonable boundaries with someone and they start getting mad at you, they start getting aggressive with you, they start trying to circumvent those boundaries, let that be a big red flag. But if there is a presence of respect, that's a very good sign. Communicative. The dominant does not use their role to justify withholding or hiding. I feel like this is a big stereotype in a lot of the vanilla purview, is that dominance, if you are an authentic dominant, you're very cold. You're very tight-lipped. You don't show a lot of emotion. And you certainly don't enjoy yourself or laugh very much. And I think all of that is completely and utterly false. If you are an actual healthy dominant who knows your power, who knows your authority, and you're not using that role to hide and withhold and to play a game, then you are going to want honest communication, because communication is what builds intimacy. Communication is what allows you to do new things, to have new scenes, to explore, to play, to express. And on this note, dominance, I'm not saying you have to give up all of your information. I would highly advise against that. You can be intimate without overstepping the boundaries of appropriate communication. So again, maintain your independence, maintain your autonomy, but also, dominance, don't use your role, your position as the top, as the one in authority, to silence or shut down the lines of communication. Empathic, capable of taking on another's perspective. The quality of empathy is incredibly important in a dominant, because submissives, you know how vulnerable this is. Essentially, you as a dominant, think of it as like lens on a glass, as a pair of glasses. Let's say your dominant lens is red. So when you have those dominant glasses on, everything you see is tinted red. Empathy is being able to take off that lens, first identifying that you have that lens, take that lens off and placing, let's say the submissive lens is blue. So you put a pair of blue lenses on and now you see everything with a different tint to it. That essentially is empathy. So submissives, look out for that. Emotionally intelligent. The dominant has the ability to identify, regulate, and express their emotions. If you cannot identify, regulate, and express your emotions, dominance, you really need to work on that. And submissives, this is something you need to look out for, because the danger in not having emotional intelligence is what we saw in NXIVM. When Keith had this very sociopathic view on emotions, that emotions make you weak, emotions make you inferior, etc. That is the last perspective that you submissives want a potential dominant to have. So empathy is important, but emotional intelligence, especially, look out for that. That's a big green flag. Altruistic. The dominant does not pursue submission with a sense of entitlement. This one is a big one, submissives. You want to look out for a dominant who does not see sex as the only value in submission. Essentially, the question that I would ask is, would you still want to be a dominant if there was no sex involved? Okay? That's a big one, because that will tell you their motivation here. Okay? A lot of dominants, pseudo-doms, don't know the first thing about dominance, but they're porn addicted and they want kinky sex. If they have the right suit and the right charm and the right cologne and the right moves in bed, then they'll be able to win submission. No, that's not submission. That's kinky sex. Call a fucking duck a duck. Okay? So, kinky sex and authentic dominance is different. And submissives, you need to look out for that motivational difference. Do they just want kinky sex? Are they just looking for a wet hole? Or are they looking to move in their dominant energy with someone who's moving in their submissive energy? Big difference. Kind. The dominant does not use their role to justify aggression and bullying. Now, dom types, I'm not saying that you have to be all smiles and compliments and lovey-dovey all the time. I'm not, but there is a difference between using your role as a dominant to just be like, oh yeah, I'm a dominant, so I'm an alpha and I'm an asshole. Like, no, alpha and asshole are two different things, okay? So don't use that dominant role to justify just picking on people and picking fights and being shitty to people and demeaning people. Like, if that is something that your play partner likes, degradation, humiliation, go for it. Otherwise, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Okay? The thing is, children, genuine authority doesn't need to be mean to be powerful. But somehow those lines have been blurred where it's the mean, cold ones, the ones that never smile, never laugh, those are the true dominants. And that's bullshit. It's not only a bullshit narrative, it's an abusive narrative. It's a sociopathic justification. And that's not authentic dominance. Again, genuine authority does not need to be mean to be powerful. So pay attention to that, submissives. Is the dominant kind? Can they operate with a sense of kindness toward other people? Or do they feel like, oh, because they're a dominant, they have to be aggressive and demeaning and degrading all the time? Humble. The dominant accepts responsibility for their communication, behavior, and mistakes. Here's the thing, humility does not make you weak, and it certainly doesn't make you powerless. If you are humble, you know your authority, you know your power, and you're not threatened by the concept of a correction or an adjustment or growth, okay? Think about how powerful you truly are when you are not swayed emotionally by criticism or correction, okay? When you're humble enough to receive that, you're immovable. So submissives, look out for that. Is the dominant the potential partner here? Do they have a willingness to learn? Do they have a willingness to grow? Do they have a willingness to change their behavior if necessary? And that's again what we saw with Keith. No one was allowed to question him, okay? And he was certainly not adjusting his behavior. Submissives, that's a big, beautiful green flag. If you have a dominant who's humble enough to be responsive to your feedback, that's an excellent sign. Self-disciplined. The dominant has mastery over themselves before attempting to extend their authority. Think about that. Think that through. The dominant has self-mastery before they attempt to extend their authority, okay? When you can't even manage your own self, your own schedule, your own emotions, your own diet, your own, if you can't manage yourself, yet you have the ego to think that you would be able to manage someone else, you are locked in some cognitive dissonance, number one. But number two, that's a big red flag for you submissives. Look out for that. Look out for that. Look at the patterns that the dominant exhibits in their own life. Do they have adequate self-care? Do they have an adequate work-life balance? Does the potential dominant have the self-mastery to be in control of their emotions? Do they have self-control? Or do they just let their emotions fly and their reactions fly? These are signs to look out for. Does the dominant have self-discipline? Have they mastered themselves before attempting to master someone else? And finally, consistent. The dominant is consistent in exhibiting these traits in their communication and behavior. This is the biggest test of all submissives, is if the dominant is consistently exhibiting all of the points that I just covered. That's the true test. And I say this is the true test because patterns don't lie. Your emotions may confuse you sometimes. You may not know really how to interpret things in the moment, but patterns don't lie, submissives. So look out for patterns. Look out for, is what they're saying and what they're doing the same, or are they different? They claim to do these things, they keep promising these things, but it never happens. Okay? That's a big sign. If there is inconsistency, because we want consistency, because patterns don't lie. But inconsistency in of itself is a pattern. So look out for that, because another thing, submissives, patterns take time to develop and to identify. So that's something that I think if I could leave you with any piece of advice, in addition to all of these green flags to look out for, is would you slow down, children? My God, you are just meeting someone, jumping into bed with them and think, oh my God, I love them so much. They had a magical cock. And then you lose your brain. And then you get manipulated. And then you come back to me in 6 months crying, wondering where you went wrong. Okay, well maybe you totally fucked up the flow of intimacy. The flow is safety, then trust, then vulnerability, then intimacy. Intimacy meaning like sex. Okay, that's pretty fucking intimate. But yet, you children skip the safety, don't establish trust with this person, start to get vulnerable, which will give an abuser weapons to use against you, and then you fuck them. Patterns take time. Slow the fuck down. Pay attention to patterns. If you are giving up so much of your intimacy and vulnerability to someone that you don't actually know and can't actually trust, these patterns of safety, these consistent traits haven't been developed, you are setting yourself up as a target for an abuser. So take your time. There's no rush. Watch and learn, because that is the biggest test. Are they consistent in the traits that we discussed today?